Record. Okay, welcome everyone to Artivism, the Power of Art for Social Transformation. Today is Halloween, October 31st. Thank you all for being here. The student ambassador for today is, give me one second, is Kayla Salter, a senior at Adelphi University in the Honors College. She is pursuing a BFA in acting with a minor in dance. Her past roles include number 11 in The Wolves at Adelphi University, Celia in As You Like It, and the world premiere of Girls in the Boat with the First Stage Young Company. When not on stage, Kayla teaches theater to students K through 12th grade and works as a dramaturg. Her dramaturgical work can be seen off-Broadway in Rattlesnake Theater's world premiere production of The Get, opening November 9th. After graduating in May, Kayla will continue to work both on and off stage and hopes to connect with different communities through her artistry. So take it away, Kayla. Thank you so much for being today's Student Ambassador.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Kayla. This is my senior year at Adelphi, and I'm very happy to be here today. So a little background on me. I have been a teaching artist with a theater company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, back where I'm from. I have taught in their theater academy for students. I've done a little bit of everything K through 12, but I really love middle school. Something about them, to me, they are at that perfect age where they're not judging themselves enough, but they're old enough to understand what they're doing. So I love working at this theater academy. We have never turned any students down for money issues. We do a lot of fundraising throughout the year so that we can accept anyone on scholarship or financial aid bases. And we also do a lot of programs in schools and bring schools into our theaters to see different shows. Right now, as was said in my bio, I am working with Rattlestick Theater in the West Village, and I'm doing dramaturgy on a new play called The Get. It's a play about a young woman who's navigating her relationship with her faith and her spirituality. So we are doing a lot of work with the community on this play. We are having some different community events during the run of this. So we have an interfaith conversation. We'll have a couple rabbis, we'll have a priest there, and we'll have a few other people from different faiths so that we can get together with people in the community and talk about what faith and spirituality means to all of us. We're also doing a couple Shabbos gatherings because this is a very Jewish play and talks a lot about the Jewish community. So I'm very excited about all of that work. Now I'll introduce our speakers. First, we have Lally, who is a theatrical director and the Associate Dean for Faculty and Programs in the College of Arts and Sciences. She has been an associate professor in the Department of Theater for over 25 years. In her theatrical career, Maggie has been intentional about directing productions that have social justice issues as core themes. She's currently collaborating with the Bridges program and Epic Players, which is a professional neuro-inclusive theater community in New York, on the current production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, running this week in the AU PAC. There will be a special relaxed performance this Friday, November 4th, for members of the neurodivergent community. She has created courses in devising theater, theatrical outreach, and currently she teaches the interdisciplinary course, Exploring Disability Through Theater, with her colleague in sociology, Professor Deb Little. And our next speaker after Maggie will be Marlee Koenigsberg, who is a theater director and teaching artist in the New York City area. She is currently pursuing her Master's of Arts in Applied Theater at CUNY School for Professional Studies. In her work, Marlee has collaborated with a myriad of organizations such as New York Deaf Theater, Underground Skills Exchange, Roundabout Theater Company, the Shadowbox Theater, Westport Country Playhouse, and Chautauqua Theater Company. Marlee is passionate about access and inclusion in the arts, as it is part of her mission to create accessible theater that centers disability and dismantles ableism. At CUNY, Marlee is a member of the student-run Disability Access Coalition as Vice Chair of Accessibility. Marlee earned her BFA from Adelphi University in Acting and Theater Arts. Since graduating from Adelphi, Marlee has returned as a guest director for O'Neill and Williams Shorts, Silent Sky, and Fall Arts Festival 2021. Our next speaker will be Rachael Feldman, who is a teaching artist, facilitator, consultant, and performer local to Brooklyn, New York. They hold a BFA in acting from Adelphi University, as well as an MA in applied theater from CUNY School for Professional Studies. They are co-founder of GenderWise Trainings, an organization that brings gender diversity trainings to schools, companies, and theater spaces using applied theater techniques. They also work as a consultant and facilitator with Outsmart NYC, an organization that brings sexual assault prevention training to nightlife spaces. In addition, they work as a teaching artist with New York City Children's Theater, CUNY Creative Arts Team, and Broadway Bound Kids, where they have the joy of working through social and emotional learning through theater with young people of all ages. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Thank you. Before I speak, I just want to mention that I'm Maggie. I am a white woman in a pink turtleneck sweater with pink glasses, and I have straight silvery brown hair. I want to thank the Artivism team, Professors Angela Racas, Lake, and Carolina for inviting us to share today. As a director and as a teacher of theater, I am aware of the power of the arts as a tool for creating social awareness and change. As a person, I value contributing to a more just and equitable world in the ways I'm able to. And as a teacher, I like to encourage my students to marry their passion and their craft to create new ways of making a living while encouraging social change. And Marlee and Rachael are two terrific examples of alumni who are marrying their passion and their craft to contribute to change in very different ways. I'm excited for you to meet them. Slide, please. When we were preparing for this event, I actually looked through slides of past productions and found one from 1982. For those of you who've been around Adelphi a little bit, I am an alum, and that is the top floor of Post Hall, which used to be our studio. We called it Studio B, where we did a lot of, we had a lot of classes and special performances. So this was a play called Remove, written by a classmate, Dan Kagan, my first foray into directing original work. But it was a play about 5 very different women seeking assistance in an abortion clinic. And it just, it really struck me. And I just felt like I wanted to share it because that was over, I'll say it, 40 years ago. And this is one of the first images I actually have of me as a student marrying my passion for social justice and my craft. And it actually amazes me that 40 years later, the subject matter is still extremely relevant. Slide, please. My work as a teacher and an artist reflects my passion for social justice. Plays I've directed at Adelphi include Top Dog, Underdog, which you see in the left corner, Lysistrata in the middle, and Machinal. They relate to oppression, war, and in this last one, how the industrial age and all that came with it crushed the soul of a young woman. Slide, please. One production that was particularly poignant, and I love looking at that image of those people standing, and that all of that red is lighting and actually plastic garbage bags that we use to create that image of fire. One piece that was particularly poignant was the creation of a new work for the centennial of the Triangle Fire Project in 2011. So a group of students worked with my colleagues Sarah Martin and Nelson in the creation of a play that not only honored the memory of those who died in the Triangle Garment Factory fire in 1911, but they also found ways of exploring how garment workers today are experiencing similar restrictive environments that lead to similar outcomes. There was a major fire in Bangladesh at the time of us telling this story, where dozens died in a garment worker fire. The same thing, they locked the doors where they were working so they wouldn't steal fabric. And dozens died in Bangladesh. Rob Linné in education actually invited us to participate and encouraged us to do this. So interdisciplinarity is also another aspect of my journey into as a social justice advocate in this work. Slide, please. These two slides move outside the Department of Theater into university-wide initiatives. There were a number of them, but these are two that reflect the kind of university-wide work that I participated in to encourage awareness and change on campus. In that first one, you'll see the ghost light was a response to the divisiveness after the 2016 election, where people pledged to be the light and to be safe havens for students and each other in the aftermath of the election. The second project, and that is a poster designed by a graphic design student, was a reading of 12 Angry Men done with women and a trans actor as part of a Get Out the Vote drive. Many departments came together: ABC, criminal justice, communications, art, theater, in order to do this production. Slide, please. And the last university-wide piece was a huge endeavor to bring awareness of sexual assault on campus. And a student, Isari Wijasundara, who is now at Yale University, finishing her third year at Yale, and I both directed a reading of the Stanford rape survivor's letter. And he was then Vice President Joe Biden's response, with 99 members of our campus community representing every constituency. Slide, please. I teach courses like cabaret theater and exploring disability through theater with my colleague Deb Little, as you heard, which helps students find their voice as writers about issues in their lives. I also create original projects with students that play to high school students as part of a yearly human rights conference. The theme changes every year, and students write the piece. They're writers and performers that are based on the theme. So that picture on the left is Women in War. That was the theme that the women wrote about. The young woman standing in front is playing an actual woman war photographer that she's looked up her biography, and she wrote about her experiences. And that huge slide behind the women is one of the images she took in Somalia. So with colleagues, so that is one project. The other thing you see is just activism and work on campus, supporting students protesting I think their fears after the 2016 election. And I think it's really important that students know that they have support in the academic community with their faculty members and administrators to support and guide them. And so I just wanted to share that image. Slide, please. Great, but pull it back to the last slide because that's Marlee. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, but we'll go back one. I need to leave shortly because we're preparing to open a production of The Curious Incident of the Dog at the Nighttime, as Kayla said. It's a beautiful coming of age murder mystery that's focused on the story of a young man who is neurodivergent, Diana Damilatis, Executive Director of Bridges, will be our guest for the post-show discussion Wednesday night. And we're preparing for a relaxed performance of this play that will be this Friday night to make the experience more welcoming and accessible to the neurodivergent community. I've put the link in the chat if anybody's interested. Students, please know you can get a free ticket to any performance. The student rush is after noon on any day of the performance. You're welcome to get a free ticket for the show. And that is another example of just putting the pieces together of art and passion and social justice, and using a play like this to be able to create larger conversations, I think, about our neurodivergent community on campus. And without further ado, I look forward to you hearing from Marlee Koenigsberg.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Marlee. I am a cisgender white woman. I have long brown hair. I'm wearing a dark blue sweater, and I'm sitting at my desk with a beige curtain background behind me. My pronouns are she, her. And as you see on this slide, there's an image of Marlee Matlin with blonde hair. She's wearing a red dress and making the I love you hand shape. As I love to share this fun fact that I was named after Marlee Matlin, as I'm also the child of a deaf adult. My father is deaf, and so I love this connection between the acting and theater world with the actress and then what I do myself as Marlee. And I identify as a CODA, which is a child of a deaf adult. And I am also disabled. I'm a part of the disability population as I have a learning disability. So there's a few intersectionalities there of who I am. And when Maggie and Rachel and I started chatting about this presentation, we were talking about pivotal moments where theater, creating theater for social justice was kind of lighting a fire in us and something that we knew we wanted to do. And I kept trying to think, what was that moment? What was that moment for me? And I kept going back to kind of being born into caring about access and caring about inclusivity in theater and in the work that I did growing up as a kid, being in shows, being in musicals, having my dad come and say, hey, Dad, what did you see after the show? Because not everything could be accessible. And so I've always wanted to create work from like a selfish standpoint of wanting my parents to be able to equally enjoy the show and have my dad there. So that just always felt like it was something in me, inherent from my upbringing. But then I also remembered something else, a very pivotal moment in high school where I had the assignment of creating a poem in a humanities class, and it was the very end of the year. And I spent the majority of my public school life as a student who was in special ed, but also worked my way into honors courses by the time I was a senior. And I was carrying a lot of shame in walking down the special education hallway. And I would try to hide and not have folks see me because I didn't want to be made fun of. I didn't want to be teased because that was real. That was a real thing that I saw and did experience. And I thought, for this poem, you know what, I'm just going to share that that's who I am. I'm graduating in 2 weeks, whatever. And so I put it out there that, you know, that I was, in fact, the person that folks were making fun of walking down the hallway while they were also trying to cheat off of my tests and wanted me in their group work as their partner because they knew it would get done, and kind of really claimed that part of my identity in that moment. And after I performed it, my teacher said, can we share this with some administrators? And I thought, sure, yeah, go for it. I'm out of here. And in the fall, when I came back from college for the holiday break, I had learned that the hallway that was the special ed hallway was now dismantled, and the classes that were by subject were now in the hallways, because the way the school was designed was that the hallways were by subject except the special ed hallway. So when I learned that, when I came back, I thought, like, that was just such a moment where using my voice, putting it out there and performing actually made a difference and made a change that I wasn't even thinking about as a teenager about to go to college, but that it was very central to who I am and what I believe and want to do in this world, which is dismantling a lot of ableism. And this was a type of ableism the administrators themselves could not see unless I shared that with them. So using my voice in this way really opened the door for then a lot of the theater that I began to create and the type of work that I do. So we'll go to the next slide. In my senior year, which was such a pivotal year at Adelphi, I had the pleasure of going to the Theater Without Borders Festival, which occurred at La Mama, and this was in 2011. The image you see here is from the Belarus Free Theater. It's from a production called Discover Love, and this was the first devised piece I had ever seen, and it was just remarkable how with such minimal set, like there's projection in the background of the image, 2 actors on the stage. It was a very minimal set, but the story was so poignant and reflective of what the government had been doing to people during a very specific time and communicating the impact that that had on families. And this was a devised piece from a true story, and seeing that and seeing the theatricality behind it, the conventions in which they used, I was just so incredibly inspired that this play has stayed with me since that time in my senior year. I can go to the next slide. And the Vagina Monologues, which is a poster here on the PowerPoint screen, was a piece that I was in as an actor in my junior year at Adelphi, directed by Lally. And it was wonderful to be able to be in a role that was about changing the stories of women and telling stories of women that hadn't been told. And that just felt so connected to the work that I wanted to do, that then moving into my senior year, I had the pleasure and the wonderful experience of directing this piece as my capstone thesis, where then I was able to collaborate with a very special designer who I'll talk about in a moment, and tell this story as a director through my capstone project. Next slide. This image is a production image from the Triangle Factory fire, which Maggie spoke about earlier in the presentation. And as you can see, there are folks, we are miming sewing machines, and then in the background is a projection of the fire escape from the factory fire. And this piece was, it is one of the most pivotal and wonderfully educational and co-intentional is a word I'm learning in my grad program that I'm going to keep using, experiences that I have had creating theater. And it started from the devising class that Maggie and Sarah Martin ran in the fall at Adelphi before this production went up in the spring. And within this class, there were both acting BFA Adelphi majors, as well as design tech majors. And so we were in a kind of lab-like classroom experimenting and playing with theater and creating something out of nothing, talking about triangle and throwing things together, where then I was forging relationships with the design tech students that I wouldn't have ordinarily had. And it was really, really fun to learn different conventions, to just experiment and try. And from this class, moving into the production, which happened in the spring, and building something from there. In the class with me was Paulina Macklin, who is also, of course, an Adelphi alum and someone who has become one of my best friends. We call each other artistic soulmates, and the very, very, very first collaboration we ever had was in this classroom, and we have gone on to collaborate and share many theater experiences together. And Paulina was also the designer for my capstone, the Vagina Monologues. So all of these connections happening within the senior year and making it really special. And what I think is really important about a devised process to acknowledge is like how that is extremely collaborative and led, in which we as actors are creating material, we are writing material, we are acting the material, we are also, some of us, directing the material. And knowing in my senior year that I wanted to pursue directing, Maggie also gave me the wonderful opportunity, as other Triangle members in the play, to experiment with that. And there was a moment where I had an idea for a piece and I was putting it together to be a scene for the production. We were in tech, and Maggie turned to me and went, "Okay, Marlee, you want to go ahead and direct this? Want to stage it?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I can wear all of these hats and I can have all of these creative moments connect in this way in a devised process and say something about the world at the same time." And it just felt incredibly alive, and it was very, very exciting. I'll go to the next slide, I think. Looking at my notes. And then after I graduated out into the world, I participated in KCACTF, and through that, I had met a director named Gia Farakis, and I had joined her company. And she introduced me to one of her friends named Kim Wield. And Kim Wield is in this image in the very middle, wearing a green teal shirt. She's a white woman with brown hair. And next to her is Oliver Sacks, Dr. Oliver Sacks. And in this project, we were, there's so much I want to say. I'm trying to be brief. We were together, I was assisting her, and this project was completely in sign language and in ASL, and the collaborators for it were deaf folks. So my desire to make accessible theater and my upbringing in passion and wanting to make things that were accessible and inclusive to all was starting to happen within my professional career as I assisted this production. As Kim Wield, the director, and I both have deaf family members, there was a sort of connection and goal that was overlapping in the work that we were doing to then bring this piece to life, which was a celebration of Oliver Sacks' work. Next slide. Yes, and through this project, I met many, many deaf community artists, deaf theater artists, and found my way to New York Deaf Theater. And I've worked with New York Deaf Theater on 2 productions, and then I was an artistic associate with them as well. The image that you see here is from my first production that I directed with them, which was called The Signal Season of Dummy Hoy. And this was a play about the true real-life historical figure, William Dummy Hoy. Dummy was his nickname at the time. And he was entering the baseball world, the first professional deaf baseball player. And the play speculates on his real-life story of creating the signs and signals that we use today in baseball, for safe, for out, as necessity to communicate with him out on the field. So he's a little known hero in sports world with a wonderful story. And to theatricalize this play and bring this to life was a real joy. And I had that moment where my dad could come sit in the audience and enjoy it just like everybody else. And here we also incorporated, in the image, you'll see a scoreboard, and that's where we put captioning. There was sign language throughout the play, but we wanted to create a world that was inclusive, that was accessible and inclusive in creative ways, not just have the caption on the side or have folks needing to sit in certain spots. This way, it was a part of the world and it was integral to the storytelling itself as well. So that was a really, really wonderful experience. And I think there's another photo of that one on the next slide. Yes, and these are 2 of the actors creating a hand shape. They're sitting at a table and creating a hand shape, which was the name sign for one of the characters. Next slide. Yes, and in between these professional experiences, I also had the wonderful experience of coming back to Adelphi to direct as a guest director. And here in these 3 images, you'll see from O'Neill and Williams shorts, which I co-directed with Maggie Lally. And this was a series of short plays by Tennessee Williams and Eugene O'Neill. In the image below, the woman who is walking on a railroad track and holding a doll is from This Property is Condemned. And the image above that one with the woman holding a baby in a red dress, and the police officers are standing behind her, 2 in suits and 1 in a police uniform. And then to the image to the left is Mooney's Kid Won't Cry. And those are 2 actors, one seated at the table and one is facing that same direction as the woman sitting at the table and has their arm in the air. And that is, this experience was so lovely to come back and have a break from this kind of commercial theater that I had been in and that I had been immersed in, to then be back in an educational environment where it was about the students learning, and it was about looking at the issues that these folks were facing and personalizing and saying, hey, like, how different these situations might be, but how can we relate to them, and how can we bring ourselves into these worlds and these time periods that are so different? And the educational component inside of it was a really wonderful joy. And we can go to the next slide. Yes, and then the second production when I came back again in 2017 to Adelphi University was directing Silent Sky. And here you'll see in the two images, the three women standing around a table, and one is reading a notebook. And then the other image is a piece of the set with the captioning device hanging into the set. So you were able to see this captioning device from anywhere you were sitting in the space, which was very important to us to, again, provide access from any location sitting into the theater that is creating more inclusive environment, more inclusive theater. And this was a really wonderful experience for educational purposes as well, because we involved the physics department with us, and we had a talk back with the physics department folks, and the students came to see the show. And so it was really cool because this was about astronomers, and the time period was very specific. It was in their textbooks, and we were able to collaborate together and bring this alive in a way where physics folks were in the pack, and we went and we visited and learned from them and sat in a physics classroom. So the connection between this type of work and bringing different communities together was something that was really wonderful, and I just so very much believe in as an artist. Next slide. Yes, and through all this different professional work that I've been doing from Chautauqua Theater Company and Westport, I'm also a member of the Roundabout Directors Group, which you'll see an image of 12 folks there, and then the Underground Skills Exchange, which I adore this company. The images of myself, very animated, directing, standing at music stands with 3 other actors standing at music stands as well, and one seated in the background. And the Underground Skills Exchange is a company that I share with you all because their mission is very education and community based. They believe in artists coming together, not in competition, but in creating community and in sharing skills with one another, so that the idea is we are learning from one another versus competing with one another. And we're building and learning through what I might desire. Like if I wanted to learn a certain skill and there's someone in the company with that skill, we can swap. What can they teach me? What can I teach them? And that we're really creating that kind of unity that we personally don't see enough in theater. So it is a wonderful company, and they're always open to many different kinds of artists and different medias. So I highly recommend checking them out. Oh, next slide. And here is an image from the Fall Arts Festival. This was last year, which was lovely. We were creating devised work outside. The actors are masked, and it was very much speaking about where they were at now. So with the first years discussing what story do they want to tell? Where were they through this pandemic and coming out of it to now create theater in person for the very first time. And I learned so much working with them through this experience and talking about the issues that they've faced and devising together to create something in a very short period of time was an absolute blast. And I think I have one more slide. Yes, and now here I am at the CUNY School of Professional Studies, the MA. I'm studying to get my MA in Applied Theater, which is a mix of devising, directing, and education. It's creating theater with specific communities or populations. It can have specific social justice topics and themes, but it is to implement change and create change in the world. And as Kayla mentioned at the beginning, I'm also a part of the Disability Access Coalition that is a student-run organization at CUNY. So my role inside of that organization is creating access and creating inclusive events for folks to come, and it's for allies, it's for folks with disabilities who identify with disabilities to continue to talk about these issues and create work together that is going to be impactful and matter. And that's me. I feel like I chatted for a long time. So take it away, Rachel.
That's a lot to follow. Great. Hi, my name is Rachael Feldman. I use they, them pronouns for my image description. I am a white, non-binary person. I have short brown hair, glasses, green striped t-shirt, septum nose ring. Behind me is a window and a very cluttered bookshelf. So I'm also going to start from Adelphi. I graduated high school BFA or bust. I was going to be a theater major. I was going to be an actor. That was it. When I was a freshman, I had the opportunity to witness a lot of very inspiring work. I got to see the Laramie Project and the Triangle Fire Project. And those got me very excited about what was ahead of me at Adelphi. I was really excited hearing about the devising class, and I was so excited to take it. And then unfortunately, it never came back again. So a lot of my time at Adelphi was a lot of hearing about the kind of work that I was starting to realize I wanted to do without actually ever having the opportunities to experience it for myself. My senior year, I did These Shining Lives. I played Catherine. It was based on a true story of the Radium Girls, a bunch of women who joined the workforce in the 1920s and were painting watches, got radium poisoning, got very sick, sued the company, and it made huge changes for labor rights a little bit late. But that was really the only experience I got. So I left Adelphi very curious about a lot of the works, but didn't get to experience them as much. I got to do a little bit of outreach. I took Maggie's Exploring Disability Through Theater class, where we got to go to a middle school for disabled students, and we taught them cabaret skills. So we got paired with different students, and we got to work with them on both writing song parodies and sketches. And we worked with them to produce their own show where they were able to highlight whatever it was that they wanted to talk about. One of the things that we said a lot at Adelphi, the slogan that we had that we would say whenever we opened shows or whenever we were doing a warm-up is, first I honor life, and with it, my life in the theater. And I still think about that a lot, because when I got to undergrad, I was very set on kind of just being an actor drone and being very happy doing whatever it took to just be an actor. And I would repeat that to myself a lot and remember that there were much bigger things than just being an actor. And those things can be honored using theater. So I graduated, I started doing a lot of touring theater. I got a lot of work in theater for young audiences, children's theater. So my first professional job was touring with Hampstead Stage Company. It was 2 actor casts where it was just us and our minivan and our set pieces and our costume pieces. And we drove around the country performing shows at schools and libraries, a few theaters, but it was mostly like public schools, and we would go and perform in their cafeteria. We did Alice in Wonderland and Greek mythology for kids. It was really cool because those shows were interactive, so we had the opportunity to bring kids on stage and let them explore the play a little bit, but it was all still very it was all just for entertainment purposes. There wasn't much education behind it, besides the fact that what we were working on were from books. I toured with Two Beans Productions, which is the non-union version of Theater Works. The first and last time anyone ever caught me doing musical theater for pay. After that, I joined the cast of Speak About It. And this is where I really found my stride. Speak About It is a touring, technically theater company. They're based out of Portland, Maine, and they tour to mostly universities for first-year orientations. And it is an hour-long show about consent, bystander intervention, boundaries, healthier relationships. It's very silly. There's a lot of dad jokes. There's firsthand accounts from survivors that are turned into monologues. And then there were also training sessions with student leaders like TAs and anyone else, RAs, is that what it's called? I've been out of college for so long, who could then, we were able to work with them to give them the tools to further the conversations on what they saw in the show, because the show was not interactive and we didn't have a lot of opportunities to discuss the subject matter with the people who watched it. After Speak About It, I was pretty sure that I was no longer satisfied with the commercial theater world. I got nothing from the grind. I got nothing from the, the ass kissing and the networking. I loved the art, but I was losing a lot of steam. And that is when I decided to apply to grad school. I applied to this program very much on a whim. I learned about it from the now current director of Speak About It, who also went through this program. So I enrolled in the Applied Theater program at CUNY School of Professional Studies, where I just graduated in May, where I focused heavily on a lot of theater of the oppressed techniques. I learned about forum theater, which is when participants watch a very short show where there's an oppressed character and different places where things could go differently. And then the participants are invited to offer suggestions for what could go differently for the characters and then step in and test out different options. I learned about process dramas, which is a technique where different facilitators will build a world around participants who are then invited to come in and interact with it and experience different historical events. In class, one of my projects was a process drama about Stonewall and the riots at different gay bars across the country. And all of our participants were put in role as patrons, and we were the police and the bartenders. And we gave the participants opportunities to figure out, what are you going to do when you're confronted by the police? What are you going to do when you're barricaded inside the bar? So I got to explore all these different techniques that weren't just performative, weren't just for entertainment, but rather invited participants in to learn as they go. I did my thesis basically my answer to Speak About It. I wanted to do consent education, but I had a lot of changes I wanted to make. I wanted it to be interactive. I wanted it to be recurring, and I wanted it to be with a younger age group, because when we worked with first years in college, it often felt like we were too late. So myself and two partners in my cohort and I teamed up with an 8th grade drama teacher at a school in Manhattan. And we built 8 sessions where we went in and talked about the content and then used different interactive applied theater techniques to explore. The pictures here are the ground rules that we built with the participants. It's really hard to see, but everyone signed it. Everyone in the class signed it. So we were all able to hold each other accountable to these ground rules, and they were able to hold us accountable to them as well. On the right is our living dictionary. I know it looks like a ton of words, but every day we went in, we added 1 or 2 words and then went over the definition and then used them in the lessons. And they were all words that were relevant to what we were teaching. And then this was one of the assignments we gave them. We had a conversation about boundaries. We discussed what boundaries were from a very rudimentary point of view. And then we asked them to show us what it meant to them and a situation that felt relatable to them that we could all work out together. Checking my notes. Yeah, so that was my thesis. And then after I graduated, or actually before I graduated, I started working with a cohort mate of mine. Over the break, we realized that we had become the token queers of our cohort, and we were answering a lot of the same questions over and over and over again about pronouns and trans people and things that people really needed to know and that were very important questions, but we were like, there's got to be a better way to get this information across. So we took some time over winter break. We interviewed a bunch of our queer colleagues, and we posted on dating apps for research to get more voices in. And we asked a bunch of people, like, what do you wish your classmates knew? What do you wish your employers knew? And we built an 1.5-hour long workshop, a DEI workshop, to give people the basics of gender diversity and how to be an active ally for trans and gender nonconforming people in your either educational or professional space. And my favorite part about it is that the second half of it is essentially a forum drama where we introduce characters who have an issue related to a character being misgendered or there being microaggressions involved. We've now started making them custom because now we're a business and we do them for different organizations. But the participants are invited to practice the difficult conversations with us in role, giving them a realistic amount of pushback, but still creating a safe space for people to have the conversations that they're often too scared to ask about. So we built the workshop, we presented it for free for a bunch of our classmates, and then it started being, hey, I work for this nonprofit and we could really use this, would you mind? And then it just kind of snowballed, and then we started charging, and then Lincoln Center Theater hired us to do it for their teaching artists. And now I'm in a really hilarious position of having this amazing thing and having no idea how to run a business. But that's where I'm at with this. If anyone wants to look up our Instagram, the handle's right there. So at the same time as doing that, I started exploring what I wanted to do after grad school. And I've gotten to link up on some really amazing projects. I was recently hired as a freelance consultant and facilitator with Outsmart NYC. It is an organization that does sexual assault prevention trainings in nightlife spaces. I have been a bartender for over 5 years. I've spent a lot of my adult life in nightlife, and I've seen a lot. And I was brought on to help them revamp their curriculum and to offer the queer perspective. So I've taken meetings with them and offered specific perspectives of what bouncers, bartenders, bar managers, and other patrons should know when dealing with trans and gender nonconforming patrons, in addition to their umbrella curriculum of making spaces safer in general. And I'm actually about to start facilitating with them. And I'm starting at one of the bars that I go to all the time, which is really cool. It's a very nice full circle moment. And then I've also been working with these organizations, which also started pretty recently. I am an actor teacher with New York City Children's Theater, Broadway Bound Kids, and the creative arts team at CUNY, which is an affiliation with the grad program that I just graduated from. They all focus on social and emotional learning as opposed to just, hey, we're going to do drama, we're going to do improv games. With New York City Children's Theater, I'm on their anti-bullying team. So we bring in different forum pieces to elementary and middle school, and they're interactive. We break the fourth wall in character. We ask the participants, like, what do I do in this situation? It's a lot of figuring out how to work through emotions and what do we do when we're angry? And a lot of the stuff that I know I did not get growing up. The work I do with creative arts team is very similar. It's forum adjacent pieces, but at an older age group, it's at the high school level, and we kind of follow what the participants want. We'll go in and we'll be like, what are the issues at your school? Like, is it going to be about coming out to your parents? Is it going to be about peer pressure? And we just kind of follow their lead and then build dramas that they can then interact with. And that's where I am now. I don't know how to wrap it up because I'm still doing it. But this is where I am right now. I think that's all.
All right. Thank you to our speakers. Now we have a couple events on the Adelphi campus that are coming up. Tomorrow at 6:45 on campus and via Zoom, Adelphi University's Criminal Justice Club and program, and the Artivist Initiative and the Artivist Club and the Jeffrey Duskovic Foundation for Justice are co-sponsoring the event called The Exonerated, False Confessions and Wrongful Conviction. Internationally recognized wrongful conviction expert and founder of the Jeffrey Duskovic Foundation for Justice, Jeffrey Duskovic will be joined by his colleague, Oscar Michelin, and advisory board member of the foundation as they discuss their work on false confessions and wrongful conviction. Jeff himself spent 16 years in prison for a rape and murder he did not commit, based in large part on coerced and false confession obtained from him, and has used that miscarriage of justice to help others in similar circumstances. Mr. Michelin has exonerated 6 people, including David McCullum, who falsely confessed and is currently preparing for an upcoming retrial for a foundation client who falsely confessed. In addition to this, next Monday, November 7th at 4:30 p.m., Anne Warburton, fiber artist and artist trained in the expressive arts, will showcase the art series she's been creating based on the artistic side of time-worn and weathered objects around us, both in nature and man-made, in the Zoom event embracing the natural art around us for self-reflection and personal growth. For more information on this, I'll put the website and the Instagram and Facebook page into the chat, or you can just Google for Artivism and Adelphi to find all of this. I would now like to ask if there are any questions for our speakers. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function or put your question in the Zoom chat.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for this very inspiring presentation. I love the work you're all doing. I really love the fact that Adelphi brings you in as guest directors just to reconnect with students. I like that you can give students here now the perspective of having seen another perspective after you've gone out, right? How to be more inclusive of individuals with special needs. How to address social issues and concerns. It's just a great experience for both you and the students, and the interdisciplinary approach, right? When you spoke about, I think it was Marlee who said about when you were direct or in the play, right? The triangles, I think, right? Is that what, yeah? Mm-hmm. How you got to work with a tech team, right? How amazing is that to work from all angles? Having that interdisciplinary approach and inspiring each other. Costumes. Question for you, Rachel. When you went on the group where you went and performing in schools, as you said, in kind of oddball kinds of areas, what did you do about costumes?
We had costumes. I cannot for the life of me recall how we kept them clean. Yeah, when we had a trunk that had a ton of costumes and also a ton of masks, because when we were doing the Greek mythology play, we had, oh my gosh, I think it was like 8 enormous paper mache masks that we would use on sticks. Mm. But I got very lucky. I had no costume changes. When I was in Alice in Wonderland, I was Alice, and that was all I had to focus on. But my scene partner was everybody else. And he would run behind a curtain and be Humpty Dumpty, and then be the Mad Hatter, and then be the rabbit who's late, the rabbit. Yeah, it was our biggest responsibility was probably just keeping track of our costume pieces and our set pieces.
Thank you all for this wonderful presentation. I would like to take a second here to thank our student ambassador. Thank you, Kyla, for your excellent work today. Yeah, let's give her all shout out. And just, if I may introduce myself, I'm wearing a black sweater with my hair tied back. And the background in the back of myself is, and Professor RJ is a white wall. We're in a classroom setting. Going back to that classroom setting, I want to send a shout out to Dr. Lake's class. We were just there as well with you, so thank you for that opportunity. Hey, class. And going to connect it with theater, we had a very interesting contest today where the students from the class had to come up with costumes that could represent social justice issues. I would like to hear perhaps your take on how it is so intricate to do that, like to think about the perception of a character, right? From such a broad idea and to visualize it into an outfit. And then apart from that, the component of having to step in front of a class to present it. And that's exactly what they did. So shout out to all of you. And we're very proud to all the work that you did back there. All of the outfits were amazing. And now we have the theater component here. And I just like to hear some tips on how, you know, you come about all this magic that you put on stage.
It's such a big question.
Having the same thought. I'm like, that's such a wonderful assignment and deep question. I think the first thing that I thought was the element of, and we're saying this a lot in our applied theater program, meeting the people, like meeting the participants where they're at. So what is it that they need to do their best work? And what is it that is going to then communicate character, but still be them as they are? And the not trying to change the actor into some other but letting it come from them and their identity and who they are, and their intersectionalities are always going to be present. So how do we bring that to celebrate it, and it is part of this character, and show that in how they are costumed and what they're bringing onto the stage in their identity and who they are, married with all the theatricality around it, is the first thought I had. Mm-hmm. Is how do we meet them? How do we meet them where they're at?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Marlee just said. I've definitely switched my point of view through grad school to be much more process oriented as opposed to product. I think anyone can produce a nice product, but what comes from the process of putting together a piece of theater, I think, is where the magic happens and where the learning happens. And the costuming and all the details that sometimes get taken for granted of, that's all part of the process where everyone kind of gets to learn who the characters are and what the story is and what we're trying to say.
We did have a presenter who's worked with us over the past year or so, who is a kindergarten teacher who now works at a library in Greece. And she uses theater to teach her students empathy and what else? Pretty much everything through theater, in addition to the visual arts, right? And sculpture and, you know, collage. But she said theater is very effective because it's a whole body experience, right? It's your mind, it's your body, you're feeling it. It's not just drawing something out and feeling it in that way. And those feelings are what stays with you. And she works with a group, her community has many migrant children, refugees. So this really builds bonds between those students and the students that are from the community. So theater has a lot going, right?
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for the audience members? Well, if I may, I have one, because like you were saying, there is the kind of the business aspect of theater as well, like, and the administrative aspect. And you have the choice, as if any other profession or career that you may choose to go along, the for-profit versus the not-for-profit, right? And especially, like, how do you, particularly I'm thinking of people that would like to follow your footsteps, right? And might come through so many obstacles in regards to, let's say, funding, and in their future, perhaps they're visualizing their career or their personal, you know, life in comparison to their career, how it might be affected because of the choices that they make. it takes very gaudy decisions to go along this route, because all you hear and main media, it might be more like Broadway, off-Broadway, and those kind of productions, right? Because are the ones that make the money. What would be your advice, say, or some tips for people that would like to follow your steps, but maybe have concerns in regards to that economical factor of putting on or following this path?
I have a lot of thoughts, and a lot of them are kind of conflicting. First of all, I don't think that there's anything more financially challenging than being just a performer. Going this route is, being very honest, surprisingly, there's decent money in it. Teaching artists make good money. The hourly rates for teaching artists, it's solid. I think what surprised me more than anything was that going this route, getting away from the commercial acting grind, the audition thing, I wasn't expecting to still be freelance. So there is that level of insecurity, at least where I am, a few months out of grad school. I work for 3 different teaching artist organizations, and residencies are sporadic and they end, and there's way less work, when school's not in session, because a lot of the organizations work with like the DOE, and the DOE is a mess right now because of COVID. So all the funding's backed up. So I would say when you have work, you can expect to make decent money, but it's the same thing as, just being a performer. It's when you have work. Yeah, Marlee, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I echo a lot of that as well. Yeah, I'm currently waiting for a residency to start up, so I'm very much feeling those feelings of when that teaching artist gig comes, but when it comes, it's great. So I also think that while I was a student at Adelphi, I had the perception that I had to choose one thing, and that one thing was what I was going to do. But in the reality of graduating and what I do so many different things. And so nurturing many different parts of you as an artist, as an educator, whatever those things are that you're passionate about, to find different avenues. So it's not just one thing. And because it's theater, because in education as well, all of that applies. It's all part of what you do as a person and what you're bringing it, whether it be theater making or whether it be into a classroom. It's encompassing who you are. So doing many different things that make you happy and that fulfill you, and that hopefully then also, put money in your bank account. But also I highly recommend for artists who have ideas for a performance or a show or a workshop, something that they want to put up, look into and learn about grant writing. There are so many grants, and finding that information takes time. So figuring out, okay, where my idea is maybe with this population in this community, where's their grants for that? And go online, Google around. You can find things that you can apply to versus having to self-produce and put your own money on the table. And all of that work does take time. It doesn't mean that, oh, you're going to win that grant and a month later you'll have a show, right? Like it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work, and it takes research and effort and writing out those grants. But keep pursuing that and keep to develop those relationships with different theater companies, to receive grants and hopefully get your work out there, because we need as much new and diverse and real stories and real work out there as possible. That nonprofit, non-commercial world, although that's great, but whatever it is that you're creating that you want to do, I think there's definitely ways you can do it. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of research.
Yes, definitely. Also, I would say reaching out and not being afraid, as another presenter said in a previous edition of Artivism, of the no's. Like, what if you just go to a corporate and be like, I have this project, would you like to fund it, right? Perhaps expanding your mind in regards to just going out and you looking for the funds as if you were that big Broadway production. Why not, right? here in Artivism, we also have kind of like a tradition that we close our presentations asking our speakers for a key takeaway for actions for the audience. As a reminder, we're recording this presentation for all of us present now and for all of us watching it as well. What would you say, and before I go there, I would like to say also thank you to Dean Lally for making all this possible, for all her support throughout the ARTIVISM initiative project here. And now, unfortunately, she had to step away because she's working on a production. But for both of you, and for you, Kyla, also, what would you leave us with today as a key takeaway for action from this presentation?
I'm going to go with the first thing that came to mind. It's been said, but put your voice out there and use your voice, because your story is yours and it can create change. And letting your voice and your perspective into the world, whether that's through teaching, whether that's through theater, we need it. Someone will learn something from your story and your voice.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that if you can't find the work that you want to do, if maybe it doesn't exist yet, make it up. There's probably a need for it and people will appreciate it.
I'm going to kind of follow both of those and say, just do the thing that you want to do. Because if you really want it that badly, nothing's going to actually stop you from doing it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you to Dr. Stephanie Lake, to Dean Lally, of course, to our sponsors, Adelphi University, Sync for Hope, Gottesman Libraries, a Teachers College at Columbia University. Hope to see you back again. Have a good night. Thank you. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.